So in this video, I'm going to show you my workflow. Everyone's got their own workflow, and of course, everyone thinks theirs is the best and theirs is, the right way, but there's no such thing. So I'm just going to show you what I do in hopes that maybe you'll learn something new. And if you don't have a workflow at all, if you're, a total beginner, this will be something really great for you to learn early on and develop your own workflow, because you always want to make sure to do things the same way, so you're not making a mess of your files, a mess of your records, not knowing what to do next, or forgetting a crucial step that you'll really regret later. Alright, so once I get my import screen open, I'm going to select all the photos from that photo shoot and hit tilde to check mark them. I'm going to tell it where to go. I'm going to rename my file something nice and specific. And I'm going to go down here and give it a subdirectory inside of my main photography folder. I'm going to name that and hit import. Now, as your photos import, you may not see anything show up until you change your filter on the top to none. Now, this is sped up, of course. I wish my computer was this fast. It's importing all the raw files, copying them to my hard drive, and next it's going to convert them to DNG, which I explained in a different video. And now I'm going to get ready to cull them. That's my next step. So I'm going to set my filter to show the unflagged photos with no starring or anything like that. So it's basically showing all of my photos, but if I exit, it'll go away. So here I'm speeding through really fast, and I'm using my number fingers to tag them as 3, 4, possibly a 5. I know it's a super good one. If I see any bad ones, I'm going to hit X to get them out of there. I'll delete them later. I usually start them as 3s first, and then I'll go back through and I'll get the 3s only and make them 4s. Then I go back through the 4s and make them 5s, and that'll give me my best of best. Those are the ones that I want to edit, spend time on individually. So here I am going back to the 3-star photos. And I'm going to do equal. So now I'm only viewing the 3-star photos. I've got quite a bit of them, so I need to demote them. So I'm going to make all my 3 stars 2 stars, all my 4 stars, bump them down to 3, and all my 5, and make them all 4. I've just slid everything down by 1 star. That way I have no 5 stars. So I can go to my 4, which are right now the best, and I'm going to pick the winners out of those, because those are the best ones that I want to deliver. Never deliver subpar images, never deliver unedited pictures, never deliver alternate shots that are just super similar to another one you've already edited. It's just not worth it to give anything less than your best work and best finished work to a client. So here I am going through my 4 stars, and I'm marking my 5. So here's all the winners. All right, so now I'm going to start my editing process and go through each one. And you want to make sure that that check mark is on the bottom right. That will synchronize. Whatever you do now will apply to all the photos that you have selected in the library view, which is G on your keyboard. And D is develop. And I'm actually applying this to all these photos. This is my first step, is I'll apply one setting to all the photos that I know will work good. I'm shifting some greens and yellows to make a vibrant green look for this park. Increasing the brightness of their skin. Basically things that I would do to all the images. So here I am individually editing this photo. This is a little hazy, so I'm going to increase some contrast, make sure my white balance is correct. Go down here and do a little bit of dehaze, a very interesting setting that they introduced recently in Lightroom. Do some vignette to make her really stand out, because when you get lots of lens flare, there's a lot of flatness. You need to introduce some darks to balance it out. This one's a little purple. If you look at that tree, it was kind of purple. I'm going to make it more warm and natural colored. Bump up the contrast, give that glow, because for this photo shoot, I'm really going for a almost overexposed, glowy, just beautiful look. It's maternity, it's pretty. Well, in photography, it's pretty. Now, in this image, it was overexposed on the right, so I used a graduated filter to bring the right side down. And I'm going to use another graduated filter on the left to bring that side up. Now, you might like the contrast, but I wanted to see what I could do to sort of kind of correct that, so it's not as drastic. I'm going to make sure her color temperature is warm and natural. And I'm playing with the highlights here. On the right side, it's overexposed, so we've got lots of highlights to play with. And that looks pretty good, much better than before. Now the crop is not quite centered, so I hit C for crop. And if you use that little bump on the top of your crop screen, you can get it centered. This image is pretty nice already, but I want to increase the contrast to really make her stand out from the background. Play with her dress a little bit, not too much. You don't want to change the color of someone's clothes because they know what they wore. A lot of backlighting on this one. Got to be careful. Make sure that they're visible and distinguishable. I think there was a lot of pollen in the air, so the background is very hazy, which I love. It looks great. And go warming it up, adding some nice little bit of contrast and actually negative clarity, which I don't do a lot, but it gives a nice soft kind of soap opera look. But do not go too far because it really will look like a cheesy soap opera. Beautiful little girl here. We'll make her glow, really stand out. The contrast is a great tool to make your image just look more vibrant with the values, and it does affect the color, so you have to be careful. I don't go too far. That's a big newbie mistake with editing and Photoshop is people just go crazy with the contrast slider and things look like color barf. It's just all the skin tones are off. There's too much blacks in the image. It just is gnarly and nasty. So be careful with that contrast. But don't neglect it. I have actually neglected it for a few years because of that. But it's good. All right, so I'm done. I'm going to select all, do Control-Shift-E. I'm going to export my photos here. I send them to an edit folder. That's part of my workflow, which is inside the main named directory. Now I'm going to bring all my images that I need to touch up into Photoshop. I'm going to do some small little fixes. Here I am bringing this into Photoshop, and I'm doing a few adjustments to her. I'm using the Heal tool to get rid of some stray hairs. Now I'm using a top layer with a really soft brush to give some glow. I'm going to use the brush and healing tool and a little bit of stamping to get rid of some of this dent on her belly, which is I think from her belly button. It's just a little distracting because she's got a nice uniform belly, but then it's kind of like it's got this dip in it from that. So again, I'm using my brush tool, very carefully using the right color, the right value to brush over that indentation from her dress to make it smooth. She dropped some bubble solution on her belly. So Heal, we'll get that out real quick because her dress is one nice pattern. There we go. J for Heal. Now again, I cropped it, make sure that it's centered on her head. Centered with them. Don't cut off any body parts if you don't have to. Got some more bubble stuff there. Now the background has a few things in here. I'm using Clone, which is S, because the background is pretty uniform, so I can sample from one part of the background and use it on another part. Make sure that horizon is even. Now I'm using Clone again to get rid of some of her stray hairs, because that background behind her is pretty much the same texture. Just got to be careful if I'm using a spot that's too dark or too bright, but I can use it to replace her hairs and make it look a little more clean, because it was very humid and very sweaty on this day. As you can tell, Dad here was sweating, as was I. So I'm using a brush I sampled from his skin, and I put a very low opacity, around 20-30%, and I just paint on top of his skin. Now this is the brush tool again, and I'm basically using his skin tones. You have to resample if you go to a darker or a brighter spot, but it's basically like makeup. You're painting on top of their face. A little leaf there on top of her dress. And as with anything retouching related, don't overdo it, or they'll look like a fake Barbie overdone glamour shot. So very low opacity. Sometimes I let the imperfections show through just a little bit so there's still skin texture. So same thing, I'm using brushing here. This image, unfortunately, was a little out of focus. So I'm going to use some Smart Sharpen, which I really like, to just bring back some clarity. Get rid of that stupid leaf. Same thing, using some brush, sampling his skin tones for the different areas to cover up his sweat. And I'm using color balance, which is Control B, because this image was a little off with that color, so I fixed it there. Alright, my next step is I bring all my images into JPEG Mini, and this will smash their size, not their pixel size, but their data size down. I just saved 45 megabytes. And that is pretty much my whole workflow. The only thing I don't have on here is that I would bring my images into Pass, which is a photo delivery system. And with that, I would use to upload my photos to it, send my clients a link and instruct them how to download their photos, and they have their photos. And I don't have to send them a USB, you don't have to send them a CD to get lost in the mail or scratched or whatever. And it's very easy to use. So, all right, well, I hope you guys learned something. If you have any questions about more workflow, let me know. I know this is kind of a simpler look at it. There's a lot more specific things like record keeping and contact and tax information and money stuff that I don't go into here. But if you have a different editing workflow, let me know.